Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to divide this thing up and label it to export. So we're not going to do any materials in Rhino this time. We're going to do it in another program. But in order to export this and have the geometry represent itself accurately, this works for, you know, your packaging design stuff as well. This is just kind of a practice run using the owl here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the object and explode it. Of course, that breaks it into little pieces. And then I'm going to go through all the little pieces, change this to shaded so you can see, go through all the little pieces and make them on different layers and name them. So if I select this, surface, this, and that part, and then join them back together. So this whole chest area is going to be one material. And then I can change these by right-clicking, go to Change Object Layer, or Move Layer to Object if you have a Mac. And then I can click here and rename the layers. And if you don't see the Layers tab, you might have Properties selected, type Layers in the command line, or click on this little symbol here. So I'm going to change this to Chest, and I might want to call it Owl Chest. That way, if I have multiple objects, it'll be related to that owl chest. And then I'm going to hide it. And if you did it right, it'll hide. And then I'm going to select and continue to do that all the way through. Right click, change object layer, call this feet, join it together. So it's not going to be all one piece, but at least the surfaces are one piece. And make sure I got everything. And you know what? I think I might even put the bottom on that layer too. I can join those together. Change object layer. Oops. Owl. And I'm using underscores because underscores work better in code, and when we export it, the names will exist with underscores. So try to use underscores wherever you can. And then I'm going to call these talons. And I'm going to change the object layer. And then I'm going to go ahead and hide it. Hide this too. And you can see part of the reason why we're hiding stuff is so you can pick up these little things that aren't being hidden and make sure they're on the proper layer too. Change object layer, they'll disappear. Then I'm going to bring this layer back and select the objects on the layer by right-clicking and join it together. So now I'm going to click on one spot here and hide it and just make sure, yep, all those parts joined. Okay, cool. Now this big section here, I'm going to make all one piece. So I'm just going to go left to right, click here, grab, oh, I got some of the beak. And create a new layer. Call this owl body. Okay, change object layer, join it together, hide it. See, we're missing a spot, bring it back, select that too, join it. Oh, changed it to that layer because it's the default layer. It just changes it back to default if it's confused. Change object layer, makes it green again, hide it. Okay. And then I'm going to select, actually let's do a left to right selection. So I can go left to right and just select the eyes. If I go right to left, remember I select everything. So left to right selection comes in handy. And then create a new layer, call this one pupil. Change object layer. I'm going to pick a different color so I can know that I'm doing the right thing. So just change it, labeling with color. Join it. Always make sure you don't forget to join, because otherwise you're going to have a lot more objects on weird layers and stuff. So you want to make sure it's joined all at one piece, because otherwise it'll label every part of that surface as a different object. We got to make sure it's all joined. So join, change object layer. Okay. So sometimes I had a copy of this on top of itself, so I actually had to click on it and delete it, and then it stayed there because there was another one. So when I undid it, now I know there's just one. That's just one piece. Shift, click, and we'll turn that off. Looks good. All right. Let's do the beak next because it's easier to grab from left to right there. And then we can create a new layer, and I think there's a plus sign down at the bottom on the Mac. Underscore beak. And let's change that color to something green, maybe, a little muted. Okay. Change object layer. Join it, and hide it. And then we've got the owl eyes left. One more layer, owl underscore eyes. Change color. Let's do something blue. Okay, yellow, why not? Change object layer. Join them. Okay, now I'm going to click on these individually. Hide. 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 Let's bring back all these layers. And we can see it's all color coded. Okay. And if you're ever missing things still, if you right click on the light bulb or do show objects as a command. Okay, so I'm going to just do this real quick. Click on it, delete. Click on it, delete, click on it, delete. Just I'm checking to make sure everything's all one piece. If I can click it and it deletes, then I know it's joined. And it looks like my feet might not be, my talons aren't joined. So bring everything back. And let's see if these can join. They might not be able to, they might not be touching, but if they're joining, yeah, that's better. So we just tested the model. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to export this to another program. Program we're going to use for setting up, you're making sure your models look nice is Blender. And I might even go ahead and do the entire scene in here. So let me just put this on a pedestal and create a couple more things here. So let's go ahead and just draw a rectangle. We just do it from the top view. Rectangle. Okay. Go to perspective, and then I'm just going to extrude this out. Oops. Broke my own rule. Extrude, curve, and I'm going to do 40 inches. Whoops. What units? Did I change my units? Let's see. No, I'm still in inches. Oh, but that's right. This thing is only 4 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger now. So I'm going to scale it up. And you can do that by using a scale factor. So I can type scale, enter, and then select the object if it isn't already, and then click on a base point, and then type like 5, and it makes it 5 times bigger. Okay. So now if I look at it in the front view, I can determine how big this thing is now. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like I can measure it that way, or I can use dim, D-I-M, for dimension. and just kind of abbreviate it a little bit. Look, okay, so it's 20 inches tall. Now it's too big. So again, I can grab the whole thing right to left. Actually, let me just undo. Shrink it back down, scale again. Click for a base point, and I'm just going to do 2.5. Okay, that's probably better. All right, then we go to a top view. And that's again why we use this program, is because we can have real sizes and spatial relationships. And if you're doing environmental design, environmental graphic design, accuracy becomes really important. So let me just delete this and redo it. Okay. Extrude curve 40. Looks a little better, but it's still pretty high. I'm just gonna command shift click if I have a Mac, or control shift click if you have a PC. You can grab this. I can click on the arrow and I can make it 36 inches. I made it 40 inches. I can just take off 4 inches, make it look a little better. 2 inches. And always pay attention to the direction there too. Okay. So now let's create a surface that we can use. I'm going to move this to the 0 point. Move, enter, click, enter, or just click and then 0, enter. And that moves it to the 0 point. Next, I'm going to create a big surface that's kind of going to be like a backdrop for it. And I'm going to do that actually using sub-Ds. So the sub-Ds you might be familiar with already. We're going to use a sub-D plane. And I'm just going to create this plane kind of like that. Okay. And then I'm going to subdivide it by type subdivide, and gives it more. And then we're being fancy here. That looks good. We'll do it one more time there. Not too much. I can always add edges where I want to. So that command right here, insert sub-D edge. I click on the edge I want a sub-D loop, and then if you move it in, it tells you where you can put it, and it'll actually change the shape of this edge a little bit. Okay. Or you can even crease these edges if you need to. Make them straight. All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to grab some faces. So Control Shift click to grab faces. And then we're going to pull this up. Maybe I'll just grab these edges in the back here. Pull that up. Just making some kind of a like backdrop here. And then remember, if you control click and then double click, it'll grab all of the edge loops and you can kind of pull it out and change it that way. Okay, and the reason for this is, of course, think of it as a studio, right? So if I look at this in like rendered, you've got that infinite background thing happening. And you can make that studio kind of space any shape you want. Another good way to do it is with the sub-D box instead. So if I do, where is it? Box, sub-D box, and go up like this, subdivide, and then I can tab to get the edges. And I can actually delete faces off of this too to open up the surface and have it be something that surrounds it. See? On all sides. You can control the light a little bit better there. And then tab changes it back. So with sub-Ds, you have two different functions. And if you hit tab, it makes it soft or rigid. And so it makes it a little easier to control things in this kind of rigid geometry form. Okay. All right, so we're ready to export. I think this is kind of a nice little void area. We'll see what happens. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer, one more layer for the background. And new layer for the pedestal. And let's go ahead and change the colors again. These colors are important for making sure you got everything on the right layer. Okay. Click on this. Change object layer. Click on this. Change object layer. Of course, the colors aren't showing right now because we're in rendered view here. So let's change to shaded. Okay. All right, so now we've got all our layers done. Next problem is we've actually got a issue with the naming of things. So yes, we've named them on our layers, which is all well and good, but under properties, you see if I click on this object here with this here, you see that the name is nothing. So now you got to go through here and type in backdrop, ped, and so on, all the way through here. Okay, so yeah, you got to do that for all of them. And I actually can go to my standard here, and if you right click, you can create a new button. This is kind of tricky. You might not want to do this, but you can do a new button, and then this button editor thing pops up, and you can actually enter PythonScript into there. So I just automatically renamed everything using this little red button here. If I go to right click and edit button, and you look at my macro 00 here, and you can see this Python script, I'm running it on there to change all the objects to the layer names. So if you want to try to do something like this, you can. Again, you right click, create a new button, this pops up blank. You can select an image or something for the color of the button so it'll show up, otherwise it won't. And then title it whatever you want. And this is the command line. So just copy that verbatim or get me to send it to you in some form if that's what you want to do. But otherwise you can just, there's not usually that many layers on this project, so you can just go through each one of them and change the name so that it matches the layer. Okay, now we are ready to change it to the metric system to export. So we go to units, and we can go to meters. Okay, yes. All right. All right, I'm just gonna fix my zoom here, so I'm gonna zoom extents. Now I'm gonna grab the whole thing, and I'm gonna go File, Export with Origin, and find maybe the midpoint right there on that. Okay. And then we want to create a folder. I've got my Blender project folder here. And I can put in here, new folder, call it package test. And then we're going to change this from STL to OBJ. So OBJ is right there. Click on that. Make sure these are all clicked. And then title it. Okay, package design. Save. And then a new window should pop up. And you want to make sure your formatting matches mine here. Okay, so polygon mesh object formatting. I'm using Windows. Mac is fine if you're using Mac. This is all the same. And I'm going to click on map Rhino Z to OBJY, naming. And then here's the important part. This is why we had to rename things. The names of objects will be OBJ objects separate in the scene so we can edit them in our next program. Layers is OBJ groups. And then under mesh here, unmodified, all that. Okay. And then it gives you the option for more or less polygons. More polygons is fine for now. We can always change them later if we need to. And there we go. So now we're ready to open this in another program.